When you head to the shops for your weekly food run, do you ever flinch at the ever-increasing size of the bill?
Yes.
Thank you, Kate.
Yes.
Well, now there are calls to ease pressure with a cap on grocery prices, but is it too good to be true?
Not a want, but a need. It's a necessary expense none of us can avoid.
You definitely see some things that are just like, this is not what it used to cost.
$10.90 for tomatoes. You don't know where to shop, how much to buy.
And with the number of Aussies struggling to afford groceries doubling over the past 4 years, the Queensland Greens have unveiled a bold plan to cap prices on basic necessities.
The cost of groceries will keep going up unless the state government steps in, puts a cap on essentials and breaks up the big supermarkets.
It would see supermarkets forced to freeze prices at January levels for 30 items including bread, milk, cheese, nappies and period products.
And would only be able to increase at the rate at which wages go up. So unless wages increase, the cost of these basics won't be able to go up either.
Great. I'm all for it. If it's cheap.
People shouldn't be stressed in Australia about the basics.
If it's done in a way that it doesn't produce issues down the road for those who are actually the primary producers, makes sense.
Similar moves have been made in Europe. Just last year, Croatia introduced a price freeze on 30 essentials, while France rolled out caps on 5,000 items. Hungary had price caps on basic food staples for 2 years, but has since lifted them. But critics are far from sold.
It's classic politics. It's more grandstanding than substance because it focuses on symptoms rather than causes. Whenever you put in price caps on pretty much anything, you start to get shortages. So sure, supermarkets might have to promise that they'll have something at a given price, but it may not always be in stock.
Saying it's a short-sighted solution that could drive up prices in other areas.
If people can make money doing something, they will. If you put in place a cap saying, oh, you can't do it like that, well, they'll just do it differently. You simply find that other things go up in price to make up the gap.
So is the Greens' proposal a desperately needed lifeline or a band-aid solution that will only make things worse?
Here to tell us more is Queensland Greens MP Amy McMahon. Amy, just tell us more about how these price caps will work.
We've said there will be a list of 30 essential items. We've put forward a few proposals for what would be on that list, things like bread, milk, cheese, nappies. Someone yesterday asked me if Turkish Delight will be on that list. I'm not convinced. But we would have a fair prices authority that would be responsible for setting a list of 30 items, and there would be one item from each of those categories that the supermarkets would be required to offer.
Amy, we've just heard economist Chris Richardson basically say this is a terrible idea. He says it will trigger shortages and that supermarkets will simply find other ways to increase the prices. What do you say to that?
Yeah, look, I think these kind of criticisms are exactly what we would expect to hear from Coles and Woolies and conservative economists. These sort of commentators would love to tell us that the only way to run the country is to let big corporations like Coles and Woolies make huge amounts of profit. To some of these criticisms, I would say look at the example of France. France currently caps the price on 5,000 items. We're saying just 30. France hasn't seen any shortages. In fact, what they have seen is that food inflation has decreased.
Hey, Amy, it's a very well-intentioned initiative and one that would be welcomed, I imagine, by a lot of people, but it's hard to imagine supermarkets just kind of going along with it. So what's to stop this from hurting the farmers and producers? So forcing them to take on the discount in order to be guaranteed shelf space?
One of the things we know that is making farmers suffer the most at the moment is the immense corporate power of Coles and Woolies, who are able to use their huge amount of wealth and their market share to give farmers pretty bad deals. We know that at the moment, actually, the cost of producing food, supplying food is going down. But at the other end, Coles and Woolies keep on price gouging everyday people. What we're saying is that if you break up the supermarkets, farmers would get a better deal. They'd also be in a better negotiating position to be able to get better prices, as opposed to at the moment where they're really just forced to accept those prices from Coles and Woolies because they have such a huge amount of power and such a huge amount of wealth. And as a result, they're able to make some of the biggest profit margins in the developed world.
Right, so to be clear, price caps couldn't come in until the process of breaking up supermarkets has started. And we're then talking about
those things would
Right. So we're then talking about a process of years. And if you did it the other way around,
Yeah.
I mean, it would be a disaster. So you kind of have to do it in that order. But by then, I mean, the cost of living crisis, who knows? I mean, that's so far down the track.
Yeah, look, the process of breaking up the supermarkets will take some time, and that's why we've said we need these price caps in place now. We have everyday people who are struggling to put food on the table. We have an increasing number of people who are in food stress nationwide because they're struggling to afford groceries. And the alternative is that we let that get worse and worse. We let supermarket prices continue to go up, and more people have pushed into financial stress and food stress, which is why we need to put in place these measures to cap the price of these basics, but also to start breaking up the supermarkets.
Amy, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We've